faculty and BFAs, you guys can have a seat. There's plenty. So please make sure we fill as much as possible. So this is our 12th annual TedX. And one of the things that I say to all the speakers, there's 2 students this year, 3 staff members, a parent, 2 outside experts, is what I say to them is you're never going to be in a more supportive space. And that goes for all of you as at your time here at the school. Like, this stage is incredibly supportive. And what I've said is you can expect that you will have an attentive, interested, and engaged audience. I'm talking about you guys. So hey, there's 8 talks. I get it. In 8 out of 8, if we hit 8 out of 8 for each one of you, that's remarkable. So you're not gonna fall in love with every talk, but every talk has something. So we've got 2 sessions of 4 speakers each. I think the longest talk is maybe 15 minutes, so these are charmingly short for our attention spans, right? And this year's theme is grit. And this is a whole bunch of different things, because grit means different things to different people. There's physical resilience, mental resilience, there's overcoming obstacles, there's how you deal with things, how you process stuff. There's lots of stuff to learn today. You guys are all smart. I mean, most of you are super smart. Some of you are smart. There's an opportunity today to become smarter. So what I would ask is this. Please enjoy the day. As I said, we've done 12 of these and they've all been excellent. But you are a huge part in making the day excellent for these speakers. They've all taken a lot of time, months preparing this. They're nervous. It's hard to get up in front of you guys. So please make sure you're really welcoming. And when they look out here, I get it, like, you know, if you have somebody who's beside you, maybe is starting to do the head bob, maybe you could just remind them to be attentive. That would be great. For people up top and anybody who thinks an AirPod would be a great idea, I have one from last year that fell from the balcony. I really don't want to have the matching one. So please make sure, again, that you're spending your time paying attention and learning something. You guys are great, and it's going to make their experience a brilliant one for them and for you. So, I think that's it for housekeeping. The break, because of the weather, we're not going to do the tent outside this year. We're going to go down to Crooks for 20 minutes, probably about 11:20. Zoe and the band will be playing. There's going to be snacks down there. So go down and have a chat. Think about what you've just seen. Get full of good food, and then we'll be back here probably around 11:40. It'll be about a 20-minute break, and then we're in the home stretch. I think that's it for housekeeping. Have fun. These guys will spend a lot of time doing a lot of work for you, so make sure you enjoy it. It will get a little bit warm in here because there's a lot of us, so you know, if you got a heavy jacket on, maybe take the heavy jacket off. And we'll also stretch a couple times. On that note, I think we're about ready to go. We're going to have a brief video introducing TEDx to everybody, and then we'll start with our first set of speakers. But before we do that, I do want to introduce our MCs for this year. If Nem and Max can come out, if you can give them a hand. Perfect. So, don't they look great? So after this video, they're going to come out and kick off the event. Thank you for making it a great event for the speakers, and enjoy your day. Thanks.
Good morning, Brentwood College School. Thank you for showing up to Brentwood's 12th annual TedX. My name is Max Capern. My initials are MC, and for one day, and one day only, I will be MC the MC.
And I'm Nim, and we are so excited to be your MCs today. And the theme for this year's TEDx is grit. And now I'm sure we've all heard the Brentwood saying of grit and joy, but today we hope that you're able to take away what grit means to you. And on this note, I'd like to remind everyone to really lean into the talks today because this is truly an amazing event and you can gain so much from it.
I'll be introducing our first speaker. Our first speaker is Katie Liu, a grade 11 in Allard House, proud to be in Allard House. A while back, she suffered a traumatic injury. This injury taught her grit and perseverance. Through it, she learned that sometimes life isn't about running through it. Sometimes it's about taking it slow, one step at a time. Thank you.
How did you all spend your summer? Now, I need you guys to raise your hand for this. How many of you spent time with your friends from home during summer? Traveled with your family? Went to summer school? Or even got a summer job? Okay, so there's a number of you for everything. That's all really great, and that's how I usually spend my summer too, doing all the typical stuff. But let me tell you what I actually did. I remember waiting in the hospital with a swollen knee and tearful eyes. That was a month after my ACL surgery last year. And when my mom asked me, "Where does it hurt?" I responded with my heart. I was so tired from the countless hours spent in the hospital and wanting to move like everyone else. In fact, in the past year, I've undergone 3 surgeries. 2 knee surgeries and a heart procedure. To the doctors, they're small procedures that they perform every other day. But to a teenage girl like me, those were major life challenges that required a strong mindset to push through, which is what I slowly learned and will share with you all today. As many of you know, I tore my ACL from skiing in Vancouver during spring break like 18 months ago. And all it took was a pile of snow and a tree. The thing is, a lot of people who get injured happen to be pros doing backflips down a double black. Me, I was just on the blue run for the first time, and really, I should have stayed on the green. Fast forward 3 months, I finally got my ACL reconstruction surgery. And for the first bit, I recovered very quickly until a complication arose, and I lost all the progress I made. It was truly devastating. Those were dark times. My knee was so swollen that it took me from walking with the knee brace back onto crutches again. And in that moment, I had to brace myself for the worst because I knew that this setback was ugly and it was a hard pill to swallow. I'm sure all of you know what it feels like to pour tons of effort into an idea, a goal, or even a piece of work, only to watch it fall apart and having to start over again. This is where the setback tested my mentality and perseverance. I needed to embrace every part of this journey because I wanted to do the most for myself. That brings me to my first takeaway, which is to never rush a delicate process. Even though ACL surgeries are so common, everyone's experience is different. I really overworked and rushed myself because I was scared that if I didn't do a lot of rehab, I wouldn't be normal again. Now looking back, I really should have taken it one step at a time. During my time with the complication, we really tried everything to find answers, but nothing seemed to help, and surprisingly, not even my doctors. Even though I was already doing everything that I needed to do, like icing, heating, massaging, and rehab, things stayed the same way, and my situation for the future just wasn't looking bright. At that point, I didn't know how to stay hopeful anymore. Hope is something we all have, and it flickers just like a candlelight. It's a capricious thing that easily offers us sunlight, but also evaporates in an instant. I know you've all felt it, whether it's watching a sports playoff or walking into exam after an all-nighter. Hope is a strong driver, but here, hope faded for me, and this sadness wasn't something an ice cream or watching TV could fix. And you know what the worst part was? I got reminded every morning that I couldn't get anywhere without those crutches digging into my armpits and diminishing my hope. Then I realized that there was no easy way out, so I really had to believe that everything would get better, even if that meant gaslighting myself. So you know what I did? Not to be cliche, but I took a deep breath and repeated everything that I had to do, slower than before, one step at a time. Soon, I was told to take half the school year off. Now, for most of you, that sounds awesome. That is golden. But I didn't want to miss out. So now I had grades to look out for and places to be. And keep in mind, I was still hurting. So just like that, all the stress and struggles really accumulated to a breaking point, where self-encouragement and positivity just wasn't enough to survive Brentwood. I don't want to do this anymore. Before I knew it, I found myself flying 11 hours back home to get another knee surgery. I hated the idea of missing out on school and time with my friends, but I told myself there was nothing to do except to take things one step at a time, starting with the second surgery. A month and a half went by, and I was back in school, walking normally without crutches. Yes! Things started to get better, but in front of me was still a tedious recovery to face. I actually spent over a year in sports rehab, where all the injured people at school end up. I got really distracted when people talk about how quickly they return to their sport, when it took me months just to stand on both feet again. And I think it's quite universal to have felt that way too, whether it's in class, or in your sport, or in the gym, or even on the stage, when you always feel like people are progressing faster than you. But it's not that you're not working hard enough or not progressing at all. I had to remind myself that I needed to work at my own pace because everyone is different, and I had a second setback. So I took one step at a time, literally, leveled up one rehab exercise at a time, and got back into different activities, one step at a time. And look at where I am now. Looking back, I remember having days where I thought I couldn't continue anymore. I would wake up feeling overwhelmed with this deafening silence of helplessness. It felt like this thing that I was dealing with was bigger than me, bigger than my life, and that really tested my mental limits. Reflecting on the bright side, I learned a lot through this one experience, and gratitude is one big takeaway. Most people, including me, take their mobility for granted until you lose it. And my journey through this is a constant reminder to be grateful. I had an ACL injury when I was 15, and as horrible as it was for me, I know there are much bigger and worse things out there that people go through. Everyone's experience is unique, and from my journey, I learned to take things one step at a time. For me, grit was the ability to recover and work my way up after hitting rock bottom. It was showing up for myself every day, even when I didn't want to, doing the boring and repetitive work that nobody sees. And that persistence is grit. Getting those things done one step at a time will eventually allow you to take a big leap. So next time when you face a dull process, like when you're stuck on a math problem that you think everyone else has already solved, just slow down and do it step by step, one at a time. Thank you.
17 men's rowing coach and an ultra-marathon runner. He's completed 20 ultra-marathons ranging all the way from 50 to 170 kilometers, including a double crossing of the Grand Canyon, the Wilpa 100-mile endurance run, and a self-supported expedition to the highest peak on Vancouver Island, the Golden Hind. With his talk, you can run 100 miles, and here's why. Please welcome to the stage Mr. Seth Moyer.
I want you to raise your hand if you think you can run a 5K. Awesome. Keep it raised if you think you can run a 10K. Keep it raised if you think you can run a half marathon, which is 21 kilometers. What about a marathon, which is 42 kilometers? Keep it raised if you think you can run 100 miles, which is 160 kilometers. I see a few brave souls, but if you put your hand down at any point, there's no shame in that. Running is daunting. It's difficult, boring, and if you're not accustomed to it, you may be concerned about bad knees or hips. Maybe you haven't been to the gym in a while, or your cardio isn't up to par. Those are all valid concerns. But I want to give you some good news. You have the ability to run 100 miles, and you have the ability to do it today. Here's why. The average height and weight for a Canadian person is 5'7" and 175 pounds. The average body fat percentage for a Canadian person is 20%. So let's say you're perfectly average. 5'7", 175 pounds, 20% body fat. 20% of 175 is 35, meaning you have 35 pounds of stored fat on your body. Each pound of fat contains 3,500 calories. 3,500 times 35 is 122,000, which is how many calories of stored energy you have. The average person will burn around 100 calories per mile. This means, from a metabolic perspective, the average Canadian has enough energy to run over 1,000 miles right now. Isn't that incredible? Suddenly, 100 miles doesn't seem so extreme. Part of what makes running so fascinating is that the barrier to entry is so low. You needed to learn to ride a bike. You needed to learn to swim. Nobody needed to teach you how to run. You just knew. And you knew because it is deeply ingrained in our identity as a species. To understand why, we need to go back about 7 million years. This is approximately when there was a split in the lineage between what would become chimpanzees and what would become humans. Let's take a look at a photo. What are some differences we can see? Well, we have less hair, we're taller, we have larger craniums, we're better looking, but the main difference, and the most crucial one, is that we stand on two legs. Standing on two legs lets us do a number of different things. We become taller and can see farther. We have more of our skin exposed to the wind for better cooling. We can use our hands to make and manipulate things. But the one we'll be focusing on is this. Standing on two legs makes us extremely efficient at using oxygen. If we line up against a chimpanzee in a 100-meter dash, it's going to whoop our butt. Chimps are built for quick bursts of speed, situations like getting away from a predator or getting to prey. But if we line up against that same chimpanzee in a half marathon, that chimp doesn't stand a chance. This is because of how the breathing mechanics of a chimpanzee operate. Its lungs are stuck between 4 limbs that are being used for movement. Because of this, it can only take 1 breath per step. So its breathing pattern is coupled to its movement pattern. Our lungs are not stuck between 4 limbs being used for movement because we only use 2 limbs to move. And so we can breathe independently of how we are moving. This makes us, humans, the best endurance athlete in the mammalian class. In fact, we are such good athletes that we can outrun horses. It sounds crazy, I know, but bear with me. A well-conditioned horse can run up to 100 miles in 24 hours, which sounds impressive, until you consider the fact that a well-conditioned human can cover double that distance in that amount of time. And the world record for running 100 miles is under 11 hours. And the furthest a human has run without stopping is 350 miles, which is 560 kilometers. Why are we better athletes than horses? For the same reason we're better than the chimpanzee. When a horse runs, it overbreathes and it overheats. It needs to rest and pant in order to recover. When we run, we keep our breathing under control, keep ourselves cool, and deliver oxygen to our muscles at a rate that allows them to function indefinitely. This is the foundation of the persistence hunting hypothesis, which suggests our species may have evolved by literally running wild animals to the point of exhaustion. Whether or not this hypothesis is true is beside the point. But what I believe the mere entertainment of this idea emphasizes is that humans are amazing creatures, and you are a human. Okay, but maybe you're not a well-conditioned human. I'm not saying you have to go run 100 miles today. In fact, it's probably a bad idea for most people to attempt that without proper training. But if you do, the muscles in your legs will not let you down. The only troublesome muscle is between your ears. The only thing stopping you from achieving what 5 minutes ago you thought to be impossible is you. So what's stopping you from running 100 miles? Well, for starters, you probably have better things to do. You could watch a movie, sit by the fire with your partner, watch the sunset, scroll Instagram. Maybe you've got a job to be at or a family to take care of. And that's fair enough. But you probably wouldn't even consider starting because you think you can't do it. And that's actually better. Because if you think you can't, it means you don't have to try. But you can do it. If you can't run, you can walk. If you can't walk, you can crawl. If you need to sleep, sleep. But with the right motivation, there is nothing stopping you from getting up right now and going from here to Victoria and back 10 times. I want to be clear that this is not a speech about running. I'm a runner, and this is what makes sense to me. So if you're not a runner, I encourage you to ask yourself what else you're telling yourself you can't do. What's stopping you from answering every email you have and clearing out your entire inbox in one sitting? Or reading an entire book in a day? Or writing birthday cards to each friend and family member you care about? Or cleaning your entire house? Is your work subpar? Could your relationships be deeper? Could you read more? Because in this life, you will run up against pain, boredom, and self-doubt. And when you do, I hope you will consider the fact that your capacities are probably far greater than you give yourself credit for. And we'll start with this. Raise your hand if you know you can run a 5K. Keep it raised if you know you can run 100 miles. Thank you.
For our third speaker of this morning, I would like to call upon Janine Garside. Her story is going to be one of grit, dedication, and unstoppable determination. Let's go over some of her impressive achievements. 1, a featherweight champion in the women's bracket. 2, in the Women's Boxing Hall of Fame. And 3, it didn't even take her that long to get there. She, although out of the ring, has never been out of the fight. She is now a mentor, a teacher, and a coach to students, teaching them passion and grit. She believes that grit isn't something given. It's earned through blood, sweat, and tears. And now, from the left corner, I'd like to call upon Janine Garside to the stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to give you all 3 seconds to pick out which one of those kids is me. Time's up. I made it real easy because I'm the only girl, and I'm also the smallest person in the photograph on the team. However, I believe that I was the biggest, the strongest, the fastest, and the most powerful. My dad would tell you I have a problem with reality. He'll also tell you that it's because of him that I'm the champion I am today. That's because he came home with a flyer for a tough man competition and said that I could probably win it. And he was right about that too. So I thought, you know what, I should probably have some kind of training before I go ahead and start fighting. So I walked into what was then a ring sports gym right here in Duncan, British Columbia. It was called VAR's Gym, and I immediately fell in love. And I knew that this was where my heart was. I knew that this was where my passion was. And I hope for each and every one of you that you have the opportunity to find your passion and pursue it relentlessly. So Rick Atkinson, who was the coach there at the time, took the Tough Man Contest idea and threw it away. And we began working on an amateur career in boxing. And it was fantastic. Unfortunately, it took me outside of the confines of Vancouver Island, and I needed to explore other coaching. He introduced me to an incredible fellow by the name of Pete Estabrooks, a.k.a. Old Man Pete, who was like the Mickey of my boxing career. And Old Man Pete believed that I was the best thing since sliced bread. We went along and won, I think, 3 national titles together. And unfortunately, he also got a little bit tired and wasn't really able to make his way up into the ring on the stairs. Again, I had to look at where I was going to go next as far as coaching. It made me reflect on a mentor I had who was the manager right here at Kerry Park Arena. And he had said to me, you know what, Janine, if you want to be the best, you got to train with the best. And I thought, okay. And there was a woman by the name of Margaret Sidoroff, who was a world champion. And I met her coach and her at my first Canadian National Championship. He stayed there to watch me get beat by someone with more experience than me, but it didn't happen. I ended up winning. So he introduced himself, and I remember him, and I thought, you know what? I think they can really take me to a world title. So I called them. They were in Windsor, Ontario, and I said, how do you feel about training me? And they said, oh, we'd love to. That's great. We have room in the boxing club. You can stay there. I said, sure, no problem. I'll sleep in the middle of the ring on the floor. I don't care. And they said, no, it's okay. We actually do have some space in our house, and they welcomed me in. And I'm super grateful for that. So away I went to Windsor, Ontario, where I knew 2 people. And the only thing I knew about those 2 people was what it takes to get me to the top. And I'm sure some of you can relate to what it's like to have to travel a far way from home. I had a lot of friends and a lot of family in Duncan and in this area that believed in me, and I didn't want to have to leave. I was homesick a lot of the time, but I wasn't going to let it get in the way of what I needed to do. And so away we went. Margaret won her first world title as a professional after having only 4 professional bouts, or actually it was her 4th bout. On my 4th bout, I was fighting for my first world title as well. So I was following in the footsteps of my idol, which really felt great, and I was successful. I won my first world title in 2002. It was the greatest moment of my life, I thought. What I didn't know was going to happen is that it was going to send me into a bit of a downward spiral because I had reached that level so quickly, and I really, after the celebration was over, I felt this emptiness. I didn't know where I was going to go to next, and I reevaluated my goals, and I decided I wanted to be unified champion of the world and really just exceed my own original goal. And I couldn't wait to get started. We got going to work in the gym, and I was looking for opponents, and I couldn't get any opponents. So, it was tough, and we looked at taking some risks. So I moved out of my weight division, up in weight, which is a big mistake, anyone can tell you, in the sport of boxing. But I needed to stay active, and I took a fight with a woman who I looked at and thought, oh, I'll never have to fight her because she was in a higher weight division. But we took the fight, so here I go. I remember saying, God bless me as I was heading into the fight, but I felt like I had what it takes. And so away it went, and here's a clip from that fight. I ended up losing. A split decision. It was pretty close. I was pretty heartbroken over it, but again, I took a risk. It was out of my weight division, so pick up the pieces and move on. It was a great experience, and honestly, after losing to Chevelle Hallback, that is the woman in the picture, other than me, I didn't feel like I had to fear anybody. So we moved on. Again, becoming a bit of a road warrior and taking some bouts overseas. What happened next was I went to, I don't want you to see that yet, the stupid buttons. Okay, so what happened next was that the next bout I was able to get was in Korea. So again, it was out of my weight division, and it was for a world title. It wasn't for the title that I currently had, but I was in foreign territory. It was a pretty tough fight. I felt like I did very well. I didn't get the W. It was pretty disappointing, but since I was in another weight division and it wasn't my world title on the line, it was in another country, I didn't feel that bad. And by not feeling that bad, I meant like I wanted to jump off a cliff, but I didn't actually jump off a cliff. I felt terrible. I didn't know how I was going to go home and tell my family and my friends that I lost. Losing in boxing is one of the most horrific things, in my opinion. It's not recommended. But sometimes these losses are things we have to go through. We don't know the big picture. And my next bout was going to be for my title, for the title that I currently had. And this time, I had to travel all the way to Sarajevo. Sarajevo, Bosnia, is a war-torn country. And it was a pretty enlightening experience, but I was there to win, and that was it. So I did what I felt I had to do in the ring. I knocked her down in the 4th round. It was a very tough fight, but I felt confident that I did my job. However, once again, things did not go in my favor. And when you're fighting in another country, okay, when you land a combination, you can hear a pin drop in the room, right? But when they land just maybe a jab or something, wow, the crowd goes wild and everybody's cheering, and it was like, you know, it was taking its toll on me a little bit, you know? But what really hurt was when the decision was made, the crowd went wild and they cheered for her, and I just, you know, I found myself back in my dressing room on the bench with my head down and my heart broken. I'd never been so heartbroken in my entire life. Everything I thought that I believed in, I had lost. I no longer had a world title, and I really didn't know if what I was doing, I should be doing. I began not so certain. Like, I believed in myself the whole way. Everybody that believed in me, I had let them down, you know? And just hearing them cheer for her the way they did, I was so longing for my home, my friends, my family, you know? So I just remember the tears coming down, and I said out loud, I wish I could be hometown girl, you know? And ladies and gentlemen, here's one other experience I hope you have at some point in your life. And if I reflect back, I think I could actually physically feel it. My fairy godmother came down and boop, tapped me on the head. And my very next two bouts, and I never could have dreamed this, were in my hometown of Duncan, British Columbia. Yeah. Yeah. And I owe it all to a great man, Wally, who was the promoter of this show, but he was driven and motivated to make sure that I got a bout in my hometown. I don't know what inspired him, but I am so grateful for that person today. The second bout, I took on a woman who was supposed to be the next best thing, the greatest, okay? And I'll tell you one more thing. When I was in Bosnia, I had lost my title bout, and all I had left was a desperate attempt to get it back. And I reached out, and there was 3 world titles. And remember, my goal to be unified featherweight champion of the world. So I found the representative for the WBC, and I know who has that belt, and it's Ina Menzer in Germany, and I'm in Europe. So I find this man, I approach him, and I say, you know, I want to fight for that title. I want to fight for that belt. I want to fight Ina Menzer, and she was undefeated, okay? They looked at me and said, they will never fight you. That's what they said to me, okay? So moving forward, I get this bout against someone who's ranked number 1, and in the second round, I knock her out. It was the greatest moment, I thought, of all time in my career. However, and you can watch it on YouTube. However, the best was still yet to come. So when I beat this woman, BoxRec ranked me number 1. And the people in Germany said, why is she number 1? We're undefeated. We're the best. And BoxRec said, well, if you want to be ranked number 1, then beat Janine Garside. And they said, of course we'll beat Janine Garside. So, in the works, and what happened next, I would never imagine. I got the opportunity, I can't do these buttons. I apologize. Let's get back. So this was after I won against Lindsay Garbutt in my hometown that excelled me to the next level. So I was given the opportunity to unify the featherweight champion, or the featherweight title in Germany. The fight was in Stuttgart. Now, everything that I'd been through up until that point, I was riding a river of blood, sweat, and tears directly into the ring. Everything that I struggled to go through to get me there prepared me for the biggest fight of my life. And in the corner, my coach says to me, do not give her anything. And I know exactly what that means. BoxRec asked me before the bout, how are you going to win a decision in Germany? And I said, you know what? I knew at that point I was prepared for what it was going to take. to win in somebody else's backyard because of the losses that I had been through. And I just said, I hope that the decision will be fair, because I come from a country where we expect things to be fair. And in my heart, I've always just hoped that things will be fair and that I'll be treated fairly. And that's just the way I am. So, yeah, it was an incredible bout. I had to dig deep in the 10th round. And there was, at that point, had I not won the 10th round, I probably would have had a draw. But I dug really deep and dropped her in the 10th round, which ended up making that round in my favor. And the decision was very close. But I got the W in Germany. Here is a clip of the bout against Ina Menzer. And then here's me with the titles. But the reason why I'm here to share this with you today is because I want you to recognize some of the things that made the difference for me. And it wasn't an I thing, I say, it was a we thing. So I challenge you, it's up to you. You get to decide who's going to be in your corner when you're out there in the fight of your life. And make sure that you pick a team that believes in you. And at your very, very lowest moments, always believe in yourself. You know, because right around the corner, the best is yet to come. Your biggest victory comes right after some of the most challenging moments that life is going to offer to you. So it's up to you to keep moving forward and get to that victory. And I just want to say, the last tear I cried in my boxing career was a tear of gratitude for being given the opportunity to fight in that fight in Germany. And I wish you all the very best. Thank you for listening to me today.
So before our next speaker today, I would like to invite everybody to stand up and stretch with us. So I have two lovely volunteers to help me out here. But yeah, so stand up, take your arms up, you know, reach to the side, to the other side. Yeah, stretch your elbows out. Stretch your arms out. Whatever you feel comfortable doing. Okay, awesome. Thank you, guys. You guys can be seated before the next speaker. So our next speaker today is a member of parliament. The pace of politics is relentless, the expectations are impossible to meet, and algorithms reward any engagement, even negative. In the House of Commons, grit can easily take on its most abrasive form, and before long, you'll forget why you came. This talk is for anyone trying to hold on to their integrity in high-pressure environments and serves as a reminder that the most powerful act of perseverance is not hardening, but staying open. Please welcome to the stage with her talk, Grit in the House, Keeping It Real in the Commons, Tamara Cronus.
Parliament, and I'm here to talk to you today a little bit about what that experience is like. Now, I am also a proud Brentwood parent, and what that means is, of course, that for every proud Brentwood parent who comes to speak to you, there is a, in my case, tall, lanky student in this room somewhere who is currently slumping down in his seat, hoping that none of his baby pictures are about to appear in this presentation. So every good Brentwood talk starts with a little bit of housekeeping. And so in my case, I am going to show you, this is my workplace. It's the House of Commons. It is actually one of Canada's most interesting buildings. And at the moment, it is in the west block of the House of Commons. The House of Commons is composed of, the actual house is composed of 3 buildings. There's the east block, where actually most of the senators' offices are located, and where Sir John A. Macdonald, the first Prime Minister of Canada's office, is actually preserved. It is a really neat thing to go see on a tour. And when I first arrived at the house, one of my colleagues actually snuck a few of us in there off hours, and we got a chance to see what it looks like. There's the center block, which is being renovated right now. Some of us think it's taking longer to build than the Sagrada Familia, but that is the way the world works. And the west block, where we're currently sitting. And this beautiful room that you see in front of you is actually a temporary House of Commons. It's built in the courtyard of the west block, and it's a place where the people who've been there MPs who've been there for much longer than me remember going for Wednesday barbecues. And so just to give you a sense of where I am located, I'm a brand new member of Parliament, so I sit in the back row, but the clock, I sit just underneath the clock on the whatever, that's probably your right, the right-hand side of this. And it's a great seat because I really get to see all the action, and I've learned a lot. So in terms of continuing the housekeeping, the map behind me is a map of Nanaimo Ladysmith. It is my riding. It's just to the north of here. And what happens in Canada at the federal level is Canada's divided into 343 parts, and I represent the 115,000 people that live in the electoral district of Nanaimo Ladysmith. Now, just to give you a sense of where we are now, this is Nanaimo. This is Cowichan and Malahat Langford. I've got a Brentwood icon and a little arrow directing you to where Brentwood is on this map. And part of the housekeeping, your member of Parliament is a wonderful guy named Jeff Kibble. He has a lot of grit. He comes to us out of the Navy. He had a 28-year career in the Navy, which included actually captaining a ship, one of Canada's ships. And he actually took us on a really cool tour a few weeks ago of CFB Esquimalt. Now, this person is John Diefenbaker. He was the 13th Prime Minister of Canada. He was Prime Minister from 1957 to 1963. And aside from the fact that one of the reasons that I got involved in politics is because my dad was actually a political organizer, and he organized for John Diefenbaker. John Diefenbaker is a prime minister who said this about the House of Commons. And the reason I'm sharing this quote with you is because I was actually just elected in April. So when you first arrive at the House of Commons, you wonder how it is that you managed to get there. And then after that, you spend your time wondering how, in his case, the other 268, in my case, the other 342 people got there. And the thing about John Diefenbaker, among his other accomplishments, is he actually brought the Canadian Bill of Rights into force in the House of Commons in 1960, or in Canada in 1960. It is an incredible document that was the precursor to our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And he also actually appointed the first female cabinet minister in Canada, Ellen Fairclough. But one of the things that he's really remembered for, and I hear it at the doors still in Canada, is for this, which was canceling the Avro arrow, which you have to be a real political nerd to remember. But there you go, 3 things about John Diefenbaker if you ever need to fill something in really quickly on one of those tests. So we're here to talk about grit. And, you know, one of the things I realized last night at dinner is that the House of Commons is not actually that unlike Brentwood. I thought this as I was clearing my plates last night, because we actually, in our behind the chamber, we have a space called the lobby. And one of the things I do is I clear my own plates back there. But being in the House of Commons is not that different than being at Brentwood. First of all, it is a house and we're in houses. And there are some people who come from very nearby. And there are other people who come to the House of Commons from very far away. And there are advantages and disadvantages to that. But it is a very different experience. And it occurs to me that some of you live just around the corner. And some of you come from very far away, I live just around the corner, but I go to the House of Commons. It is very far away. There's planes, trains, automobiles, and in the case of British Columbians, seaplanes, helicopters, and ferries. Now, grit, and a second thing, by the way, is that at Brentwood, very much, I suspect, like in the House of Commons, there's always food, but somehow it's never what you're in the mood for. And really, you're sort of never alone, except when you find yourself just wondering what it is where all of a sudden you're by yourself and it's like, whoa. It's a very public existence. And there are always people watching you, whether they are the people who are watching at home, hello people who are watching at home, your friends, your teachers, the staff, the people in Mill Bay. It is actually a very public thing, and very much the way that you have to choose to be at Brentwood. We actually also have to choose to be who we are going to be in the House of Commons. And grit is a really good metaphor for that, because it is one of those four-letter words that you can use in a whole bunch of different contexts. Now, there is the first kind of grit, and that is the grit that is hard. It is a hard, abrasive granule. It grinds things down, and it can be really tough. And I think that's what a lot of people think about when they think about grit, and it's also one of the things I think that they think about when they think about politicians. And then there is another definition of grit, and that is a more nuanced, much softer, more interesting kind of concept, which is the idea of having courage and being able to show the strength of your character. And of course, I put it there as a bit of a light relief. There is also the kind of grits that you have when you go down south, a dish of hominy grain that is often eaten as a breakfast food in the morning. And in case there is anyone here who has never seen a dish of grits, this is what grits look like. Now, when it comes to the House, we have to figure out who we want to be. And the thing about the world that we live in today, and I think that people in your space know this really well, is that most of you have never seen or heard of me, unless you live in Ellis House and you got Mr. Wismer's housekeeping notes last night. But there are lots of people whose faces, or there's a few people whose faces you would recognize from Canadian politics, and that's because they show up on social media a lot. They're on the television panels, they're on your phone, they're on TikTok, and a lot of the time, the reason that they're there is they have said something gritty, something sharp, something hard, something abrasive, something like this.
I guess if I were to throw insults, she's behaving like a communist and speaker.
Now, you heard the two members of Parliament there are both honourable human beings. We refer to each other in the House as honourable members, but what you saw there was an exchange of insults, and you saw one that wasn't terribly thoughtful, right? It was just name-calling, except when name-calling actually hits at something much deeper, often unintentional. So the first member of Parliament that appeared in that clip, MP Kwan, decided that she was going to say something clever. And she said, those liberals, they may have red ties, but they're acting like conservatives right now. It's a play on the fact that our current prime minister is a little bit more of a blue liberal. He's a little bit more of an economy-minded person. And that's just the way our current circumstance is. And MP Lamoureux, who is a member of Parliament from Winnipeg North, and spends a lot of time talking in the House. This is someone who is on his feet every day, on a regular basis, often for often multiple times, because the House is actually often empty. I don't often get to speak to a crowd this big in the House of Commons. The House is often quite empty, as you saw in those clips. And so he just reacted, and he came off with the fastest thing he could think of, which was left-wing communism. And what he wasn't thinking about is that MP Kwan's family comes from China. They fled communism, and she was also the target of foreign interference. So that was probably not the best example of grit, and a really good example of hard and abrasive. And by the way, it happens to everybody. I'm not picking on those particular people. I want to share, though, another story with you. And this is actually a much warmer one. Unfortunately, I don't have the clip. But the guy on this side, the left and right thing is something I never picked up in life. The guy on this side is MP Ruff. He represents Bruce Grey, Owen Sound, and he is actually my seatmate in the House of Commons. He is a really interesting guy if you ever get a chance to meet him. He's also a 25-year veteran of our armed forces. I really admire his service, and he actually was wearing his row of medals in the House for something a couple of weeks ago, and honestly, like, he's a very distinguished Canadian. You can barely see his chest for the amount of medals that are on it. I believe he reached the rank of colonel, and he is a really honorable human being, and I'm lucky to have him next to me to be able to model the kind of grit that I actually would like to be able to exhibit when I'm in the House. And the minister on this side of the screen is Veteran Affairs Minister Jill McKnight. Now, we had a current issue in Canadian politics around Veterans Affairs. It's not something that would really interest most of you, but it was certainly relevant to those of us in the House, especially with Remembrance Day coming up. The Ministry of Veterans Affairs decided that they were only going to pay for 2 wreaths per riding. And wreaths are those round green things with Canada written across them and poppies that we lay at the cenotaphs in our riding on Remembrance Day. And so for an MP like me, it was really annoying. I have 4 cenotaphs in my riding. It was going to cost me some money to have to pay for 2 additional wreaths. But for ridings that have 48 cenotaphs in them, it was actually a really big imposition. So MP Ruff was exactly the right person to raise this point in the House of Commons, and he stood up and he asked the minister why they were doing this, why they were cutting the money, and he did it in a totally respectful way. And she did something that I really admire when she stood up. The minister stood up and she said, "You're right, we've listened, we've reinstated the money." And that's something to be able to provide these wreaths to every riding in whatever quantities that the members of Parliament require. So anyway, here's the part that I really admired. MP Ruff did not brag about it. He didn't crow over getting the best out of the other side. What he did was he opened up his desk, he took out some stationery, he dashed off a little note of thanks, called one of the pages over, and had it delivered to the other side of the House. And Minister McKnight got the note, opened it, read it, looked up, nodded in our general direction as a show of thanks, and then put the note down, and on we went with our day. And you can see here, this is Echo. She works in my community office. Our wreaths arrived this week. We are very excited about that. Now, that's the kind of thing that you're not going to see on your social media feeds. The same way that you didn't get to see that video here, you're never going to see that video. But the first video, that video is making the rounds on social media right now. And so this is the thing about the House of Commons. There's a poem, when I was about your age, you hear that a lot, I think, from people, when I was about your age, a long time ago, when dinosaurs walked the earth. And when I was about your age, there was a poem we studied in high school, and it was the poem "The Road Not Taken" by Robert Frost. And of course, that poem is about a traveler who finds themselves at a fork in the road, as I did when I arrived at the House of Commons, and as you did when you arrived here at Brentwood, and as you will whenever you start another thing in your lives. And there's a lot of ink that's been spilled about what those roads mean, but I'm going to share with you what my perspective is today. There is the low road. It is paved with the hard kind of grit, and it is downhill. You can take that road and you will be funny. People will remember you. You might be clever and sharp. And you may even be prime minister one day. But there's this other road, and it's the road of courage. It's the road where you stay true to yourself. It's the road where you know who you are. And it's steeper. And I can tell you that the one thing I really love about the high road in British Columbia and this particular kind of grit is that, as you know, anytime you climb upwards in British Columbia, the views are amazing. And so I may not end up being the most famous MP in the House of Commons. No one ever knows what their future brings. But I can tell you that one of the reasons why I've really enjoyed putting this speech together is because it gave me the chance to reflect on what kind of parliamentarian I want to be. And I hope that my remarks today will help you reflect on what kind of person you want to be, and maybe one day a parliamentarian. Now, every good Brentwood speech starts with housekeeping, so I told you where I come from, and it ends with a public service announcement of some kind. Now, your roads may take you in very different paths in life, but you may find yourself studying in first-year university at the University of Ottawa or at some other university in the capital region. And one of the ways that you might get to see the House, maybe not from my seat, but from all over the place, is as a page. And pages may not be elected officials, but they get to be in the room where it happens. And so I would urge you to consider that program if you end up at school in the National Capital Region. And in the meantime, if you are ever in Nanaimo Ladysmith when the House is not in session, or you are in Ottawa when it is, and you have any questions, I would love to hear from you. I'd love to see you. And I thank you so much for your attention today.
Hello again, everybody. So, first of all, a round of applause for all of our speakers for the first half. Okay, you guys will now get a 20-minute break. Do not go uptown. Do not go back to your house. Go to Crooks Hall and enjoy a snack, okay? See you back in 20.
Say the speakers.
Shit, no, sorry. Shit.
No, it's okay. I think all of them know.
Damn it, I knew I missed it.
too. So.
Yeah, and you can do the boat by yourself.
Okay.
For our fifth speaker of today, I'll be inviting Friba Razei up to stage. She is an Olympian whose origins date back to Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. If you don't know much about Taliban-controlled Afghanistan, women are constantly fired at. They receive less rights, less ability to do activities. She was forbidden to play sports. She stands here now, a human rights activist, head of a Women's Futures organization. She believes that all humans deserve the fundamental right to be free. She stands here a champion, turning trauma into triumph. Please give a warm round of applause to Friba Razei.
I was not allowed to play judo because a sport was forbidden for women and girls. But I took the matter in my own hands to secure that right. That was my tool to take the matter in my own hands to create the necessary opportunities, not only for myself, but for other girls. Good morning, everyone. My name is Friba Razai, and I am one of the 2 Afghan women to compete in the Olympic Games ever. In a country where it was still recovering from decades of war, it was still recovering from Taliban and American war in 2001 and 2002, I decided to do judo. Just picture a ruined city, a country was just recovering from civil war, I decided to do judo. I did not have proper judo uniform or sports equipment to train, but I had one essential and invaluable tool: grit. I had grit in me from a young age. I remember I was 5 years old, and I remember it vividly today. It was Eid, Muslim holiday, and during Muslim holidays, parents buy new clothes for their children. I asked my mother, where are my new clothes? My brother, as a joke, said, you don't get new clothes because you're a girl. I did not like that. That made me upset, and that made me angry. I wrestled him and I pinned him down until he apologized. My fight began at the age of 5. And I knew that if you have grit, you can achieve anything. In 2004, I participated at the Athens Olympic Games. That was a historic moment, not for the International Olympic Committee, but for Afghanistan. It was incredibly difficult to play sports in a country where it was forbidden for women, and a country that had never sent women's team to the Olympic Games. I was discriminated against. I was shunned by the fundamentalists for playing sports and also appearing at an international sports stage as a Muslim and Afghan woman. But I didn't give up. To me, it was important that I compete and set a precedent for Afghan women's rights to play sport. My participation at the Olympic Games was not just a competition or a sport. It was a sports revolution. It was a human rights and women's rights movement. It opened the door for hundreds of girls and women to play sports in a country that they would get punished for, and it will be punished for it now as well. It opened the door for a possibility of sports that it was impossible. Afghan women started playing different sports, such as basketball, soccer, martial arts, and you name it, Afghan women played in Afghanistan. And we had set successfully a global precedent for Afghan women's rights to play sport. Growing up in Afghanistan, I was realizing that it was a conservative country, a country where women did not have the opportunity to reach her full potential. And that bothered me because I realized that I have the grit, but I did not have the opportunity. I started a nonprofit organization to create the opportunities for women and girls through sports and through education. This organization is called Women Leaders of Tomorrow. Our mission is to do what my Olympic journey did, to empower women and girls through sport and educational opportunities, to give them access to quality of education, leadership opportunities, access to education so they become the machines of change makers. When I was growing up in Afghanistan, I had a different vision for my country. When I was in Greece during the Olympic Games, I was contacted by a group of human rights lawyers and a group of feminists who highly recommended that I stay in Europe because they didn't see a future for me to return to Afghanistan after the Olympic Games. But I insisted I wanted to return to my home country because I wanted to build my country and to have a professional career in a country where I was born, and a country that I call home. My vision for Afghanistan was that it would have women's team to the Olympic Games, that we would have female astronauts, female pilots, engineers, and world leaders. My vision for Afghanistan was that it had so advanced and modern infrastructure like the rest of the world, and a country where everybody was welcome, where women were welcome. But as we all know, that dream was shattered in 2021 when the Taliban took over back in power. When the Taliban took over power in mid-August 2021, they banned education and sport for women. And that vision was completely destroyed and gone, and everything was halted overnight. But still, we didn't give up. We accelerated our work, our effort, our time and energy to make sure that Afghan women and girls have access to education again. When the Taliban took over, it didn't mean that the fight ended. It simply moved to a new arena. But I am very proud now that we have created scholarship programs for women and girls where we bring women and girls from Afghanistan to study in Canada. One of our programs is called Empowering Limitless Minds, ELM, for scholarship support for Afghan women and girls to learn, lead, and thrive. Many of our students are also the first generation of women and girls in their families who will have access to quality of education and leadership. The purpose of this program is to equip them with the education so they become the leaders of tomorrow and to make better futures for themselves and also to the rest of the world. The beauty of that program is that it was named by the very students that the program serves, a group of young women who want to change the world and who keep learning against all odds. The program, ELM, was also named after the Dari word, meaning knowledge or science, symbolizing both the cultural pride and also the global belief that education is power. And Afghan women and girls have proven that fact. Today, I'm in one of the greatest countries in the world, Canada. I have access to education, I have an organization, and I have access to resources. But if you ask me what is the most reliable weapon and what is the most single powerful thing that will change the world, and I would say it's the only one and only tool, grit. My best tool is, and it will always be, my grit. Thank you.
Brentwood students. You may know her from her bubbly energy around campus or from her art, which has been shown in a number of Brentwood art shows and exhibitions. With her talk, Strength 101, an artist lesson in strength, please give a very warm welcome to Kathleen Brophy.
Hi guys. Whew, this is crazy. Oh my goodness. Thank you. You know, I could start this with like a quote of some kind, but I'm not gonna do that. You know, if I'm being honest, I don't really know how to start this, but then I realized that admitting that I don't know how to start it is a way to start it. So there's my intro. That's what you got. Okay, well, for those of you who don't know, art is my passion. It's what I want to study in university. It's going to be my life. It already is my life. But I suppose I don't tell people very often why I make my art. You know, what inspires me to create what I create, what inspires me to draw myself, and even more so, more specifically, to draw myself like, see if I can get it. Oh, it came. Like that, to name a few, with, you know, flayed open, et cetera, et cetera. Well, you see, guys, today, I am going to be telling you why some of my favorite art pieces that I've made recently exist. Now, I'm not doing this because I want to stand up here and go, ooh, look everyone at my amazing, fancy art. No, that's not why I'm here. Okay, I swear that's not why I'm here. I'm here because there's something I want to share, something that my art has taught me, something that I want to pass on to all of you. So can we trust the process on that? Can I get some thumbs up? I gotta see some thumbs up, guys, okay? We got thumbs all the way up there? Okay, good, good, thank you, I appreciate you guys, okay. Let's do this. So, the first piece I'd like to share with you guys today as part of my talk is called Platinum Docs. That's D-O-X, not D-O-C-K-S, that would be dumb. It's D-O-X. And I think that in this piece is probably, in regards to how I drew myself, the most accurate version of myself that I've ever drawn. And I say that considering that in a lot of my other pieces I draw myself with a tail or scales or fangs and claws. So, you know, depending on your impression of me, this one's probably going to be the most accurate version of me. But again, this one is called Platinum Docs, and I'm just going to get it up there. There it is, Platinum Docs. So when I was trying to decide what piece I wanted to show you guys first, I was trying to decide this piece or that piece, this piece or that piece, this piece or that piece. And I chose this one because it's the first piece that ever has made me cry. Well, I know Kathleen, trauma dump Kathleen, I'm serious, it made me cry. And at the time I didn't really know why this piece made me cry. I was just staring at it, listening to this like kind of sad, emotional music, you know, and I just started to cry. And at the time I thought it was because, you know, it's an emotional piece that I'm looking at while listening to this emotional music, but I realized that's not true. The reason why this piece made me cry is because it's an emotional piece that I was looking at while listening to emotional music, while also thinking about the fact that, oh my gosh, I'm suddenly sick. That means the next day I'm gonna have to take a day off, and I have to study for this thing. I have a test on Thursday, I have a test on Monday, I have this talk on Saturday, I have to do this as well, I'm on duty on this day, blah. All this stuff going on in my head. And the reason why I cried is because all that stuff going on in my head, that's what this piece is about. So what Platinum Docs, that piece is about, it's about pressure. And I don't just mean pressure of all the things I have to do, like I have a school assignment, I have to be a prefect, I have to apply to university. It's about how there are so many people I don't want to let down, including myself. Like, I don't want to let myself down. I put such intense pressure on myself. I know it's not a good thing, but I've always done it. I don't want to let myself down. I don't want to let my parents down. You know, I don't want to let my teachers down. I don't want to let my house parents down. I don't want to let my fellow prefects down, my fellow members of my boarding house. I don't want to let the younger students who may look up to me down. I don't want to let you guys down by not having this talk ready. I don't want to let the other speakers down, the organizers. There's an entire world of people that I don't want to let down. At the same time, this piece is also about the fact that while working so hard to not let everyone else down, I'm letting myself down. You know, while working so hard to make everyone else happy, I'm not as happy. I mean, it's not like I'm depressed, but I'm grumpier, I have a temper. I notice it in myself. I'm more stressed out. And I think the reason why I cried while looking at this piece is because I was feeling its meaning there. And of course, it is also about the fact that I don't have time to take care of myself, to take care of my heart. I'm so busy doing things. It's about that pressure. So that is the meaning of platinum dogs. That first piece I wanted to share with you guys. Whew, I'm going to shake that out. I'm going to shake that up. You can join me if you want. Stand up, shake that out, do a little dance. You don't have to. I'm not going to force you. Yeah. Anyway, whew, I have to shake that out. But thank you. Woo! Okay. Yeah, well, it only only gets crazier from here. So, yeah, it really does. So the second piece I'd like to share with you guys today, it has so much meaning for me. And you know how the other pieces I just showed you, and those ones I showed you on the slide briefly, I was like trapped in webs or bleeding or flayed open, there's my pancreas, you thought that was kind of odd. I don't know if that oddness matches up to the oddness of this next piece I'm going to show you, but I suppose that'll just be for you guys to decide. So I'm just going to show it to you. There it is. So yeah, I'm not sure if drawing myself flayed open on an examination table quite matches up to drawing myself as a blue Burmese python human hybrid being eaten alive by a gigantic multicolored snake, but that's up for you to decide. So, what is this about? This piece, it means a lot to me. So, here we are. Here I am, there she is, there you are. Now pretend, everyone, if you will, just use your imagination for a minute. Pretend that this is my heart on a platter. Do you see where I'm going with this, maybe? You see? Okay. So this is my heart on a platter, and I'm going to take this, and I'm going to put it down there. You guys got that for me? You good? Okay? No? Oh, you do? Okay, good. So, there, it's out of my hands, guys. It's out of my hands. It's all yours. And now I'm going to tell you the meaning behind this piece, which is titled, as I said, Strength 101. Okay. So this piece is about something it's about this burden on my heart. It's about this pain that I've had since I was 12. So that's been almost 6 years. And this pain started with something I did, /happened to me, /I did, /happened to me, you know how that is. That made me think that, to quote myself, there was something wrong with me. Imagine literal anxious little 12-year-old me literally thinking there was something Hannibal Lecter, straight jacket, wrong with me. I mean, I know it's ridiculous, but So this pain, it sounds ridiculous, but it was a pain, it carried with me. I carried it with me until I came to Brentwood. And then I think most of you know Brentwood's pretty distracting, right? So this pain goes away. And then I get used to Brentwood, and the pain comes back. And when the pain comes back, for the first time, I told my mom about it. Because, silly little Kathleen, I thought my mom would also think there was something wrong with me if I told her about this thing. She didn't, of course, and that got better. And I know my mom's out there somewhere. I think she's over there somewhere. Hi, Mama. So I told my mom about it, and the pain went away. And then the pain comes back for a second time. And then I tell someone else who's very, very dear to my heart about it. And the pain goes away for the second time. But then can you guess what happened? The pain comes back. And when the pain came back for the third time, I was hopeless, guys. I was so overwhelmed by this pain. I remember walking at times through a hallway or a room, and my vision is just blurring at the edges because I'm so overwhelmed with this feeling like, oh my gosh, what if I'm forever going to think there's something wrong with me? And it was during that time that I made that piece that was up there, Strength 101. And before I made this piece, I was thinking to myself, Kathleen, you have to beat this pain. It's time to beat the pain. It's time to be strong, be tough, beat the pain, beat the pain. That did nothing, guys. If anything else, it just made me feel guilty when the pain comes back, right? But then, in the process of making this art piece, I realized the truth. And the truth is that the strength to overcome that pain didn't come from steeling myself to beat it and fight back against it. The strength to overcome the pain came from admitting how afraid I was that I'd never actually be able to beat it. The strength to overcome that pain came from admitting how scared I was that I was going to forever feel that pain. The strength to overcome that pain came from admitting how scared I was. It came from admitting vulnerability. And that was the key to finally starting to overcome the pain, as I have now. I mean, these things never fully go away, right? But I am so much better, and frankly, I think this piece is the reason why. So that is the meaning behind Strength 101 and why it means so much to me. I'm going to shake that out again. Shake that out again. Shake it. Okay. Okay, enough of that. Whew. If you don't mind, I'm going to take my heart back. Okay. Thank you. Put that back. Hey, who wants the platter? Who wants the platter? I'm going to give it to you. There you go. Someone catch it. Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Woo. All right. So, why did I show you guys and talk about these two pieces? You see, these pieces, they're how I heal. They are me bleeding onto a canvas and leaving it up at the mercy of an audience. But, each of these little pieces, no matter if they're as vulnerable as these ones or not, they're a piece of my heart up on a gallery wall. But you see, my friends, that's part of how I heal, is by leaving a piece of my heart up for everyone to see and like or dislike or think it's amazing or think it's disgusting. Like, I can't decide what people think, right? But you see, I find strength in vulnerability. This is why I showed you guys these pieces and told you these deep personal meanings behind them. This is the reason why I stood up here and talked to you about these. This is the reason why the last one I showed you was Strength 101, is because it's the piece that taught me that being vulnerable and open and real and tender is stronger than trying to be tough. Now, guys, oh my gosh, thank you. Well, you see, this idea of strength and vulnerability is the idea I want to pass on to all of you. And it is how I'm healing myself through my art. Because you see, this idea of strength and vulnerability, for me, it comes out in the form of making these vulnerable art pieces. It comes out in the form of, and to quote myself, bleeding onto a canvas and leaving it for an audience to see. But I find my strength by admitting through these pieces that I'm not okay. That I'm bleeding, that I'm hurting, that I'm human, that I am a living, breathing human being with a pulse who's breakable and hurting and tender. And that is one of the strongest things you can do. Because vulnerability, despite what we've been taught, it's not a weakness, it's a strength. And that is part of how I'm healing myself through my art. But not everyone does art. I know that. But everyone in this room is human, at least I'm assuming. I don't know. Now, I don't know about any of you, but I overthink like crazy, as I think is most likely evident. Now, I don't want any of you to walk away from this going, oh my gosh, there's this big new idea I have to implement into my life. How do I do that? Please don't do that. That's what I do. Please don't overthink it. This isn't something that I can say, next time this happens, go do this. It's more like a thing to keep in mind, this idea of strength and vulnerability. It's something to think of next time you feel yourself or see someone else being vulnerable. Think to yourself, I am being vulnerable right now, and it's making me stronger. Although, there is one specific area that I think what I'm telling you guys today can be applied. It's for anyone who's afraid of judgment, basically meaning me, most other people my age, most other people below my age, most other people above my age, etc., etc. Here's the specific area that I think what I'm telling you guys today can be applied. If you have an idea, make it, show it to someone. If you need help, reach out. If you have an idea that you think might be weird, or people might judge it, or think you're weird, make it anyway. Go crazy. Create anything you want. Unlock yourself. And some people might judge it. They might think it's weird. They may think you're weird. And that is okay. It's scary to think that someone may judge you or judge what you make or dislike you or dislike what you make. So feel that. Let that feeling sink in and then go and do it anyway. And let the fact that you did it and were vulnerable, let that strengthen you. See, I am stronger today because of what I did, because I stood here today and was vulnerable in front of all of you today. And that is something that I'll continue to do. This is an art piece I started earlier this week, and I'm very, very scared to show it to you guys. I can't even look at it because I'm being so vulnerable in it, as I think you can tell. But that's why I'm showing it to you, because vulnerability is strength. And I hope that's something that you guys can carry on with you after this talk. Thank you.
Okay, come on. All of y'all are pretty sore. Okay. Let's get some examples going, come on.
Okay, we start with touching our toes.
There we go. Touch your toes, people. Side to side. Yep, side to side. Side to side, folks. Okay. Behind the back. Behind the back. Okay. Last one, behind the back. Take in that good stretch, folks. Okay. Okay. Yes and go. Yes and go. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. For our next speaker, we have Alex Durham. She is the founder of Grit Workshops and believes in the fundamental right to mental health. She believes that no matter your age, you should have the right to get good mental health, whether you are a child, a teenager like moi, an adult also like moi, or you're 95 years old. You deserve good health care. She has 25 years of experience under her belt that she's here to show you all today. Please give a warm welcome.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alex. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me. Do you guys have the slides on the monitor? Yeah? Okay. So back in January, I had coffee with a friend, and we were getting caught up talking about the year that had happened before us, talking about what had transpired. And she said to me that it had been the most stressful year of her life. Okay, so tell me more. So her dad had died, she lost her job, and her husband, this is the big one, who struggled with drug and alcohol addiction, overdosed, and was woken up by paramedics on Vancouver's downtown east side. So yeah, super stressful, absolutely. And she was holding on to that stress really tight, and it was affecting her both mentally and physically. So we all know the story about stress, right? Stress will kill us. It hijacks our brains so we can't think clearly. Anxiety, depression, addiction, brain fog, distraction, and it wrecks our bodies. Inflammation, heart disease, digestion issues, migraines, whatever it is, you can bet stress is to blame. So then we get the idea that we have to get rid of the stress, that the stress is bad. Erase it, crush it, delete it. And then we get stressed about the stress. And we spend hundreds of dollars, time, and energy trying to get rid of the stress. So there are so many things that we do in order to try to keep ourselves calm. Instead of just embracing the gifts that stress brings us, we might choose a weighted blanket, vitamin supplements, hot, cold plunges, I don't know, whatever it is, there's a million different things, right? Let's put that aside for a sec. So around the same time that I had coffee with my friend, I was also doing research for a new contract that I was working on. And the contract was working with high school athletes, elite hockey players. And the work that I was doing specifically was trying to figure out how they deal with stress. What I was wondering about is, I think we all can agree that it's almost like athletes have chosen stress to be part of their life. Over their lifetime, they're going to lose 50% of the time. They've got coaches, fans in their ear yelling at them about their performance. They've got a voice in their head telling them they're not good enough. Not to mention like game time decisions, where it's a high leverage moment where they have to execute. And if they fail, they're going to hear about it quite vocally from other people. My son is a professional baseball pitcher, and watching him go through the stressful moments that he's encountered in his career floors me, because it's not how I would deal with them. I would be a puddle on the ground. So I started wondering, how do these athletes process stress? And then more specifically, how do the rest of us, my friend in particular that I had coffee with, deal with the stress? And how do we do that better? So bear with me for a sec. We're going to do a really quick neuroscience lesson. Voila, your beautiful brain. We're going to talk about two different parts of the brain. This will be quick. So the very back of your brain, amygdala. So if you take your finger and just kind of push it into the very back of your brain, right back there, and you were to drill in like an inch or so, don't ever do that. If you were to drill in there, you would hit your amygdala. So amygdala is Latin for almond, and it's a little tiny dude that lives in the back of your brain, and it was the first part of our brain that was made when humans came on the planet. It's in charge of survival. So all of our big, hard emotions, anger, sadness, fear, frustration, overwhelm, start in our amygdala, in the back part of our brain. So fast forward to the prefrontal cortex. It's right back here, right behind our eyes. This is the part of the brain that evolved as humans grew, and this is the part of the brain that keeps us human. It's in charge of executive functioning, so all of those things like organizing, getting somewhere on time, doing all your assignments, studying for tests. It's in charge of solving problems, and it's in charge of like focus, concentration, kindness, all of those really human traits. So the hallmark of somebody with a really healthy brain is somebody who is able to feel their emotions in the back part of their brain, and then pretty quickly throw it forward to the front part of their brain, to their prefrontal cortex. And in that person with a really healthy brain, they have like a neural pathway that goes from the back to the front. So if you were to look at the brains of these elite athletes, you would see that their amygdala is probably quite small, and their prefrontal cortex is quite large, and that they have a really strong default neural pathway or highway from the back of the brain to the front of the brain, so that when the big stressful thing happens, they're able to pretty quickly push it forward to the front part of their brain. So, in my research, I narrowed it down to 3 things. There's a whole whack of things, but we're going to talk about just 3 things that elite athletes do in order to train their brains and deal with stress. So, number 1, they train their brain. Before they're in a stressful moment, they've already done the work to grow that neural pathway in the back of the brain. Number 2, they flip the script. So for an athlete, professional athlete, stress equals energy and fuel. And number 3, they ignite resilience. They have the ability to say to themselves, I've been here before, maybe not this exact situation, and I'm going to do it again. So then the question becomes, how do the rest of us weave all of that into our everyday lives so that maybe stress isn't harmful, maybe we can use it as energy. So let's dig in. Number 1, train the brain. So pretty much every professional sports organization on the planet has some kind of mindfulness, meditation, visualization program. And the point of that is to help these athletes grow that really strong neural pathway. So how do the rest of us do that? We're going to practice just one activity together to see if we can kind of start that process going. So can everyone stand up? You can give yourself a good stretch if you need. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to do an exercise where we count backwards from 20. We're going to go 20 to 1. Every time your mind wanders onto something else, you got to go back to 20. Cool? Cool. Once you get one, hit one, you can sit down. All right, close your eyes. And go. Quietly. Do it quietly. You do it inside your head. I love the really honest people who are still standing in the crowd. Awesome. All right, so that is a little bit harder than we actually think it's going to be because our mind pulls us all over the place. The cool thing about doing something like that is every time you bring your mind back to the counting exercise, you're growing the neural pathway from the back of your brain to the front of your brain. So it's actually kind of like a gift every time you have to remind yourself to come back to the numbers. So that's one really simple way to train the brain. The next thing is flip the script. So everyone talks about mindset, and I think I always discounted mindset as this just stupid thing, like, oh, I just have to change my mind. Actually, it's pretty powerful, the ability to just change our minds. So if you look at a stress response in a human, let's just take 3 things that happen. Number 1, pupils dilate. Number 2, our palms get sweaty. Number 3, our heart starts to beat really fast. So when these things happen to me, I don't know about you guys, when they happen to me, I realize that I'm stressed out. And I think, oh, okay, I got to get rid of the stress. My heart's beating, my palms are sweaty, what's happening? And then I do whatever I need to do to get rid of the stress. In an athlete, let's take those 3 things. So you take Trey Savage, starting pitcher for the Blue Jays last night. He's got bases loaded. The next pitch that he's going to throw could change the whole game, change the whole momentum of the game. Dodgers could take the lead, could be a total catastrophe. So his pupils dilate so that he can throw that ball exactly where he wants it to go. So that's a gift to him. His palms get sweaty so that he can grip the ball and throw the slider exactly where he wants it to go. And his heart starts to beat really fast because that means blood is being pumped to his extremities so that he can execute that pitch that he has practiced thousands and thousands of times. So in the elite athlete, they're using the stress response as a challenge response. Athletes see stress as fuel and energy, and in a stress response that's fight, flight, or freeze, they are actively choosing fight. The third thing is ignite resilience. So we all know what resilience is, right? It's the ability to get up and keep doing things, to work through hardship. It's actually grit, basically. But I think what happens to us as humans is that every single time we solve something, we just keep moving. We just go, 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 go. We never stop and say to ourselves, hey, I just solved that. That's pretty freaking cool. So what we want to try to do as humans, I think, is try to build a resilience reserve so that every time we solve something, whatever it is, homework assignment, being able to pay your rent, whatever it is, we're actually building blocks of resilience so that when hard stuff happens, we can rely on the tools that we have learned during that process. So 3 things: train the brain, flip the script, ignite resilience. So let's go back to my friend and our cup of coffee. If she had been able to practice those 3 things before her terrible, stressful year, she might have been able to perceive her year in a different way. So number 1, her dad died. So if she had been able to flip the script on her dad dying, instead of it being this huge, stressful event that she never actually got over, maybe she would have had the ability to say something like, yes, my dad died. He was in his 70s. He had cancer. And he died with all of his family sitting around his bedside, holding his hand. It was a beautiful October day, and he was at peace. The second one, she lost her job. That sucks, absolutely. But if she had been able to ignite her resilience around that, maybe she could have told herself that she's been through really hard things before. She's lost jobs, absolutely, and she's dealt with lots of hardships in her life. She would realize that she has actually already built the tools to deal with that. She is resourceful. She has a ton of connections. She's creative. She's smart. She's already got all of those things to be able to move beyond that hard and stressful thing. And then the last thing, the really hard one, her husband overdosing and being woken up by paramedics. He's fine, by the way. They're both fine. If she had been able to proactively, so before any of this happened, train her brain so that when this terrible, awful thing happened, she would feel it in the back part of her brain. So she would feel the big, hard emotions, stress, worry, anger, and feel them in an appropriate way. I'm not saying ignore those things. Those things need to be felt. But if she had that really strong neural pathway from the back of the brain to the front of the brain, she would have maybe been able to get to that front part of her brain sooner so that they could figure out solutions to the problems and that she would have a lasting patience for dealing with whatever needed to happen. Stress isn't going anywhere. We all know this. It keeps us safe. It highlights what's important to us. It gives us a boost of adrenaline when we need to do something important. But maybe it's the perception of stress that actually is harming us. Maybe it's me thinking, oh, I'm in a stress response. I better figure out this stress before it hurts my mental and physical health. That's the problem. Maybe there's a way to be less stressed about the stress. And maybe, like elite athletes, we're able to harness the benefits of stress in order to perceive things in a different way. And maybe we're able to build a scaffolding where we train the brain, flip the script, and ignite resilience in order to live a more meaningful world full of everlasting grit. Thank you.
Speaker for today is a recreation leader, a sports coach, and a young worker safety advocate. Today, he will share how changing his relationship with grit shaped his recovery from a serious workplace injury. With his talk, When Grit Isn't Great, please give a warm welcome to Darcy Kulai.
Hi everyone, my name's Darcy Kulai, and my talk is When Grit Isn't Great. When I got the email about this year's TED Talk, I thought, maybe that's something I can do. I've just done a video with WorkSafe BC, and I've been on the news talking about the high injury rate of young workers around the province. When I thought about my injuries, I realized there's two types of healing, physical and emotional. It took about a year for me to heal physically from my wounds, but my emotional healing is ongoing. Grit is generally great, and people respond to us when we display it. But when isn't it great? When I was 20 years old, I was involved in a very serious workplace accident. I was working at a sawmill, stationed at an area called the stick belt, where sticks from the loads of lumber would feed out to be stacked. Underneath the stick belt was a chain that drove it. Picture like a large bicycle chain. On one end of the chain, I noticed there were some broken sticks, so I reached in with my left hand to pull them out. But as I did, my glove got snagged in the chain and I got sucked in. There was a loud popping sound as my thumb broke. I couldn't reach the stop button, and nobody could hear my cries for help in the noisy mill. So I started pulling on the chain with my right hand, reefing on it, trying to free up my left. I was still fighting, but then my right hand got sucked up the other end of the chain, and the fight was over. I woke up the next day in a hospital bed and looked down, and my right hand was gone, and my left hand was heavily bandaged, especially my thumb. My right hand was so damaged that they had to amputate it during the night, but they saved a couple bones and they used it to rebuild my left thumb. I was planning to move down to Victoria that September with some friends and play basketball at Camosun College. But plans had changed and I was moving home with my parents. They had to do everything for me for the next couple months. It was like being a small child again. It was very, very hard, but I got through it. I don't remember much about this time, but I do remember people thinking that I was doing very well with everything. In fact, many people would say if their kid got hurt, they hope they can handle it as well as me. When I went over to the Richmond WorkSafe BC hospital, sorry, that slide just popped. They asked me if I'd ever want to speak in front of an audience about my experiences because I seemed to be doing so well. I gave that a hard no. I just didn't want to talk about it at all. Fast forward 25 years and I was having all sorts of troubling health symptoms. I was doing the Western medicine thing, but then one day, a friend suggested I go talk to a therapist she knew who was a holistic healer. Holistic healing is when the whole person is treated and not just the symptoms. And it was completely foreign to me, but I was just desperate at the time, so I decided to give it a go. During our first session, she asked me about my accident, and I gave her some details. Then she asked me how it made me feel, and I was like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "Well, how did losing your hand make you feel?" And I said, "Oh, it didn't really make me feel anything at all." And she said, "How is that possible?" So then we continued chatting, and I finally admitted something to her that I'd never admitted to anyone else. I told her it made me feel like a freak and a total screw-up. When I was over in Richmond at the hospital, I met all sorts of different people who had been injured like me. Some were badly scarred, some were missing limbs, and some were in wheelchairs. Some were all of the above. The one guy that made the biggest impression on me had lost both of his arms up to his shoulders. He told me a bit about what it was like for him to move through the world and how people responded to him. He said that kids were the toughest, and that some would point and laugh at him while others would start crying. He said he preferred the laughing. I had lived a fairly sheltered existence after my accident up until that point, so I couldn't really relate. But once I got back out there in the world, I definitely had a lot of these experiences, and they were tough. Tim Fisher is a Canadian trauma counselor, and he talks about our logical and emotional brains. Have you guys ever been in a situation where you're just feeling bothered or agitated and you don't understand why? Like you're in a situation you feel like you can handle, everything seems cool, but there's just something off. Well, what's happening here is our logical brain is telling us that everything's good, but our emotional brain is telling us it's not. So if I'm out there and a kid comes up to me and he points and laughs, or he looks squeamish, or he calls his friends to come over and look at me, I can tell myself, oh, he's just a kid, they don't know any better. This shouldn't bother you, you're an adult, but it does, every single time. Same thing with right handshakes. The right handshake is such a huge part of our culture, and when you don't have one, it leads to all sorts of awkward exchanges. And I can tell myself, come on, man, it's been like 28 years, this shouldn't bother you anymore. But it does, and the reason it does, I know now, is because it triggers my emotional brain and all the emotional wounds I haven't healed yet. One day I was talking to my therapist and my dad came up. He has all the same health symptoms as me and then some. She asked me if I thought it was all genetic, and if I was going to end up just like him. And I said, yes, I did. Then she asked me how my dad dealt with stress and emotion. And I thought about that for a second and then said, not very well. And she said, have you ever considered the possibility that you and your dad have all the same symptoms because you deal with stress and emotion the same way? And I said, no, I hadn't. It was around this time that I started reading this book. It's called I Don't Want to Talk About It by Terrence Real. The subtitle is Overcoming the Secret Legacy of Male Depression. In this book, Terry talks about some of the patients he treats, and they've all fit a similar mold. They're depressed males, their families can't stand them, and they use a variety of methods to cope with their depression, such as drugs, work, and alcohol. Terry begins treating them, and they begin to open up about their experiences and describe some of their experiences to Terry that have shaped them from their childhood. When they're feeling better and the time is right, Terry invites the families into the sessions, and the men begin to share these experiences with their families. The families finally begin to see their dad as a human being and start to feel compassion for him for sometimes the very first time. So how do these guys get like this? Well, Terry goes on to explain that when boys and girls are born, they basically feel and express emotion the same way. But this can begin to change at a very early age. Boys learn that when they're tough, hardworking, and hold their emotion in, they receive more positive attention, especially from their fathers. Crying and talking about their feelings is not as well received. Although with girls, it is sometimes more socially acceptable. Then when something bad happens to these guys, they have a really hard time dealing with it because they're so used to holding everything in. As I'm reading this book, it finally just hits me. Oh my God, I'm one of these dudes. For as far back as I can remember, my focus has been on trying to appear strong and unemotional, especially when dealing with tough times. And I realized why back then everyone thought I was doing so well, because I wasn't crying or talking about it. But what hit me the hardest was realizing what kind of father I'd been to my son up until that point. I just had such a hard time anytime I thought he was being soft or slacking off or being too emotional. Tons of shame just washed over me for the next few days. My son was 16 at the time, and I knew I needed to talk to him about this, but I just couldn't do it. Then one day in therapy, she asked me how I was doing with the death of my parents. My dad had just passed away, and my mom had passed away a few years before. Then she asked me how my son was doing with the loss of his grandparents. And I said, oh, I think he's doing pretty good. He doesn't really talk about it. Yes, I said this right after I finished reading this book, so the lessons hadn't quite sunk in yet. So anyways, we planned a trip to Vancouver. Me and my son went down to the hotel pool for a swim, and then we made our way to the hot tub. It was just me and him, and I finally asked him, hey man, how are you doing with the loss of your grandparents? And he said he was doing okay, but that he would dream about them at night sometimes and wake up crying. And I asked him why he never told me that before. And he said he knew I was sad and he didn't want to upset me anymore. This wasn't a huge surprise at the time, but it was still very hard to hear. I told him that showing emotion, especially crying, is one of the strongest and healthiest things he can do. And I told him that if I ever gave him the impression that it wasn't, I'm sorry. Then I told him that I loved him and that I would always be there for him, two things I'd never told him before. My therapist was very spiritual, and she claimed she could communicate with the spiritual world. Sometimes she would say things like, your mom is in the room right now and she's very proud of you. I didn't know what to think of this, but I did like the idea of my mom still looking down on me. So one day we were chatting, and I started to feel very heavy, like there was this huge weight on my shoulders. She looked at me and she said, "You're worried about your son, aren't you?" And I said, "Yep, I am." She said, "You're worried he's going to end up just like you and your dad with all the same symptoms?" And I said, "Yes, I am." So she said, "Well, your dad is with us right now, and he says you don't need to worry about that." And I said, "Why not?" And she said, "Because of the conversation you had in the hot tub." I almost fell over because I hadn't told her anything about that conversation yet. Around this time, I was chatting with my friend Dan, who is a health and safety officer. And he gave me some data on the high injury rate of young workers around the province. And it had an impact on me. He asked me if I have any interest in getting involved in injury prevention. And when I said yes, he put me in touch with WorkSafe BC. After a few meetings, they decided they wanted to make a video on me. So they sent a crew over to the island. You can find the video on their WorkSafe, on the WorkSafe BC YouTube channel. And part of it is filmed right here in Brentwood. And it features cameos by current basketball stars Jackson Lust, Jackson Lenarchich, and Rudolph Kruger, plus Coach Gage. I don't know if any of them are here, but can't really see, but hopefully one or two. During the interview portion, they asked me some very tough questions. The toughest one being, what would it feel like if your son was in an accident like you? He was 20 years old at the time and the same age as me when I got injured. I had never thought about that before. And when I did, I completely fell apart in front of the film crew. But I knew right then I was going to do, if there's anything I can do to reduce the number of these devastating injuries, I was going to do it. Just want to share some stats with you guys quickly here. Nearly 7,000 young workers ages 15 to 24 are injured on the job annually in BC. More than half the serious injuries happen in the first 6 months of a young worker's employment. Young male workers face a 48% higher risk of injury than the general working population. So why are these injuries happening? Inexperience and not being aware of potential hazards, lack of training or understanding of safety policies and procedures, reluctance to ask questions or raise safety concerns, not putting safety first above everything else. All of this applied to me. All of it. But the thing that hurt me the most was having no understanding of how sideways things can go and how quickly that can happen if you don't follow proper safety procedures. At my mill, if you were going to work on the stick belt, you were supposed to turn it off first. I knew that, I just didn't do it. I probably thought it was a silly rule or that it would just slow me down, so I didn't bother and I paid a really steep price for it. And I also didn't understand that while gloves can protect you from a lot of things, around moving machinery, they're actually a hazard because they can get sucked in. And there are other factors as well. I was working alone, there was no guard on the chain, and it was late at night, like after midnight. All of these things should have made me more vigilant, more careful, but I was oblivious. It took me a very long time to admit that I should have pressed that stop button because there was just so much shame around it, and it made me feel horrible about myself. But the more I talked about it and learned about why these accidents happen, the better I began to feel about things. I realized I wasn't just some stupid kid who had done something horrible and completely ruined his life. I was just a young, inexperienced worker, and I made a mistake. And I began to feel compassion for myself for the very first time. Self-compassion is the practice of being kind and supportive to oneself when experiencing suffering or failure, rather than engaging in harsh self-criticism. To illustrate, I want you all to imagine you're on a basketball team. Your team is down 1 with 10 seconds left. Your coach draws up a slick play and you execute it flawlessly. You get exactly the shot you want by the player you want, but when they step up to shoot, they miss, and they miss badly. In fact, it's an air ball. As your team trudges off the floor and slumps down onto the benches in the change room, all the heads are hanging low. All except one, the player that missed the shot. They're smiling and patting other players on the back and saying, "Good game." You snap at them. "What are you talking about? It wasn't a good game, we lost." And they say, "I know, but I thought we played pretty well." And you say, "How can you say that?" And they just shrug and keep smiling at you. And eventually you can't take it. So you blurt out, "And you missed the biggest shot, and you don't even seem to care." And they say, "No, I care, but I did a lot of other really good things. I played some good D, made some great passes, and I got like 7 or 8 rebounds. I know I missed a big shot, but everything else was great." Can you guys even imagine a teammate talking like that? I know I've never seen it. It's so much more common for us to kick the crap out of ourselves every time we mess up or make a mistake. And it's so much more socially acceptable, isn't it? Like, people think you're weird if you don't do it or that you don't care. But what's really going on here? This teammate's just practicing self-compassion. And that's a beautiful thing. One day I was talking to a good friend of mine about all the various issues I was having. And he said, "You know, all these things, all of them, they're just drops in the ocean." The more I thought about that analogy, the more I liked it. We are all oceans. And while the surface can seem rough and wavy or calm and smooth, there's always so much more going on underneath. And these drops can seem really big and awful. And they're usually things we really, really don't like about ourselves, or that we wish were different, or that no one else could see. And they can consume us if we let them. And they can really mess with our relationships. When all we can see in ourselves is the stuff we really don't like, we don't know why anyone would want to be around us or be with us. Like, don't they see what's going on here? Like, how can this not bother them? There must be something wrong with them. But then one day, a friend of yours shares an analogy, and you finally realize it. Oh, wait, there is nothing wrong with them. They just see the ocean. So why can't I do that? Well, maybe I can. Grit is a great thing. I would never argue that. But when you're more concerned with looking gritty than actually healing your wounds, well, that's not a good thing. We need to be honest with ourselves, and when things aren't going well, we need to be able to talk about it and express our emotions. For me, physical healing is hard, but emotional healing is way harder. Definitely the grittiest thing I've ever tried. It's still a work in progress, but for me it all starts with self-compassion, being kind to myself. I'm still a long way from that fictional basketball player I described, but I'm getting closer. To end it off, I'm wondering if we can all do a quick exercise, if you'll indulge me. I want you all to close your eyes. Now I want you to imagine the tide washing in and out over a sandy beach. I want you to breathe in slowly as the tide comes in. Exhale slowly as it comes out. Now I want you to think about something about yourself that you really, really don't like, that you wish no one else could see, that you wish you could change. Breathe in slowly, breathe out slowly. Now I want you to say to yourself internally, I am an ocean, and this thing I really don't like about myself, is just a little drop. Inhale slowly, exhale slowly. Now I want you to say to yourself internally again, I am an ocean, and there's so much more to me than this little drop. Now open your eyes. Thanks, everyone. There you go, bud.
Can I get the house lights up? Can we turn the house lights up? The house lights? Can we get the lights to come up? There, good. Wow. So, what a morning. 8, I think we can all agree, really great speakers, some really diverse perspectives on grit. Hopefully, you were able to take something away today. We talked about vulnerability. And I think our last speaker is a really great example of sort of that growth and being open to things that traditionally maybe we're not as open as we should be. I want to thank, first of all, you guys for being such a great audience, so let's give yourselves a hand. I got no AirPods today, so that's great. I'd like to thank the guys in the booth and theater production for setting this all up and running it. I'd like to thank the live stream team and IT. Appreciate you. I'd like to invite all the speakers to come on out so we can give them a big round of applause. Can I get all the speakers to come out? And the MCs. Come on out. Where's Katie? Where's Katie? There's Katie. Come on, Katie. On behalf of the school, thank you guys so much for bringing your message here and sharing it with us today. Thank you. Have a bell. How about a bell? And we have some gifts for you, so I'm going to ask the volunteers to bring the gifts out for each one of the speakers. And I'd also like to thank all the volunteers for all the work that they've done behind the scenes today as well. Thank you, guys. Okay, so next up, and also food services. Make sure you thank them for the great break stuff, and the band was great as well. That ends. Yes. Go, Forbes. Go ahead. You can do that. Yeah. So that's it for the 10th annual TEDx today. So this is what we're going to do for lunch. If I get the juniors to go to lunch now and get the seniors to wait about 15 minutes. And then regular sport, and most of all, thank you and have a great day.